Anna did not know that tonight would change the meaning of her life forever. She only knew she should not be standing in the master bedroom of a man who could buy entire cities if he wanted to. The rain outside the windows beat softly against the glass, like a warning. But inside the Reed estate, the world felt too quiet. The silence pressed down on her shoulders, heavier than the uniform she wore. Alexander Reed did not usually call his house staff after 10 at night. He never did. He was the kind of man whose orders were delivered through his assistant or through the cold line of his lawyer. But tonight he stood there in the shadows of his own room waiting for her to step closer. He was older than she expected up close. Not just the sharp lines of his jaw or the silver at his temples, but the tired weight behind his eyes. Anna tugged at the hem of her sweater, trying to remember how to breathe. She had been a housekeeper for 2 years in this mansion, but she had never been alone with him like this. She had heard stories, of course. Everyone in town had. He was ruthless in business, cold in love, untouched by scandal, but worshipped by gossip pages that loved to imagine he might someday break his own rules for some pretty girl. She never thought that girl would be her. She tried to keep her voice steady. "Sir, did you need something cleaned?" she asked, the words small, brittle. He shook his head once slowly, then stepped forward. She noticed the paper in his hand, a single sheet, crisp folded like a contract, waiting for a signature. "Anna," he said her name like he was testing it, tasting it to see if it felt as real as the moment did. "Do you trust me?" He did not wait for her to answer. He did not give her time to lie. "Sir, I do not understand," she whispered. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive but faint, like cedar and winter air. "I do not want you to clean anything tonight. I want to ask you for something only you can give me." Anna felt her stomach twist. She thought of the rumors, the ones her mother used to scoff at when they saw his face on magazine covers by the checkout line. She thought of her little brother sleeping at home, needing her to come back in the morning with enough money for his medicine. "I need you to have my child." He said the words quiet but clear. "I am dying, Anna. I have 6 months, maybe less. My doctors say if I want an heir, I have to try now. And I want you to be the one to carry that piece of me forward." Anna's knees went weak. She grabbed the edge of the dresser behind her to keep from falling. She heard her own heartbeat in her ears, louder than the rain, louder than the clock ticking on the far wall. "I have never," he cut her off. I know you have never been with anyone. That is why you are standing here. Because you are honest. Because you are unbroken. Because if I leave this world, I want to know there is one thing I gave it that was pure." She shook her head too fast, too desperate. "I cannot do this," she whispered. He did not touch her. He only looked at her like he could already see the child that did not exist yet. "Please," he said, his voice raw in a way she did not know billionaires could sound. "Please do not say no yet." And outside, the rain kept falling, like it already knew this night was not done with her. Anna Quinn was 22 years old, and she had always known how to make herself small. She learned young that people did not pay attention to the quiet ones who worked hard and never asked for anything more than they were given. She learned to clean up messes that were not hers, to take the night shifts no one wanted, to eat cold sandwiches in dark hallways while rich families laughed behind closed doors. Her mother used to say they were lucky to even have that. After her father left when Anna was 10, her mother took double shifts at the diner downtown just to keep the lights on. Anna babysat her little brother Samuel while memorizing spelling lists by candlelight. Even when her mother's heart got too weak for double shifts, Anna did not complain. She picked up what her mother dropped. She always did. By 19, she was scrubbing offices by day and waiting tables by night. By 20, she found a job at the Reed estate. She thought she was lucky. She thought working in the mansion meant she could finally breathe, even just a little. She did not breathe much. The Reed estate sat on the edge of town like a castle that no one was invited to. It was too big for one man, too quiet for any family warmth. The staff moved through the halls like shadows, careful not to make noise that might reach the man on the top floor. They whispered about Alexander Reed, but only when they were sure he was not listening. They said he built his empire by taking apart other people's dreams. They said he once bought an entire block of homes just to tear them down because the view offended him. They said he had no heart left after his wife died, that he buried it with her and never bothered to dig it back up. Anna did not believe gossip. She believed what she could see. She saw the way he moved through the house like a ghost wearing an expensive suit. She saw his eyes on the rare days he came down the grand staircase. They were sharp, cold, but underneath she thought maybe there was something like sadness. Or maybe she only hoped that was true. She never spoke to him directly before tonight. All her instructions came through Lydia, the head housekeeper, who ruled the other maids with a soft voice and sharp eyes. Lydia liked Anna because Anna never asked questions, because Anna did not break things, because Anna said thank you when Lydia paid her in cash every Friday. Anna took every dollar home to a cramped apartment that smelled of old paint and boiled tea. She made soup for her mother, read bedtime stories to Samuel, counted pills in the bathroom, and whispered prayers that her mother's heart would last until she could afford the next checkup. She knew her life was not special, but it was honest. It was clean in the way she kept her uniform clean, pressed flat with the same iron she used to heat leftover rice on the stove when the power was out. She did not think about men, about love. Her last boyfriend left her on the porch with nothing but an apology when he found out she refused to sleep with him. He said she was too old-fashioned. She said she did not care. She did not know what loneliness felt like, because she did not have time to feel it. There was always another floor to scrub, another plate to wash, another bill to pay. Alexander Reed was not supposed to notice her. He was not supposed to remember her name. She was just the girl who changed the flowers in the hallway every Friday, the one who wiped the mirrors in the upstairs bathroom until she could see her own tired eyes staring back. But he had noticed. For 2 years he had seen the way she carried herself, head down, eyes soft, hands steady even when others were careless. He asked Lydia once about her, but Lydia only shrugged and said, "That one, sir, is too quiet for trouble." Alexander Reed did not believe in luck. He believed in strategy, in numbers that could be tracked, in investments that gave him something back when the world took too much. He believed in signing his name on things no one else could own. But tonight, the only thing he wanted to sign his name on was a future he knew he would never live to see. Anna was his chance to leave something behind that no rival could steal, something no lawyer could rewrite, a heartbeat that would outlast his. She did not know that yet. She only knew she was standing in a room that was too big for her small hopes, facing a man who spoke like he owned tomorrow and needed her to hold it for him when he was gone. Anna did not sleep that night. She lay awake in her narrow bed listening to her mother cough in the next room and Samuel's soft breathing from the fold-out cot near the kitchen. She stared at the water stain on the ceiling, tracing the shape of it like she was trying to find a sign that told her what to do. The envelope Alexander had pressed into her hands lay untouched on the table beside her. She did not need to open it to know it held more money than she had ever seen in her life. She hated it. She hated that when she closed her eyes, she could still hear his voice asking her to carry something that belonged to him alone. She hated that for one terrible second, she had wondered what it might feel like to say yes. When dawn came, she dressed in silence and made her mother tea. She tucked the envelope into her bag, planning to give it back. She would tell him no, and then she would forget this night ever happened. She told herself she was strong enough for that. She never expected her mother to find the money first. Her mother's voice broke the quiet like glass shattering on tile. "Where did you get this, Anna? What did you do?" Anna tried to explain, but the words tangled. Her mother's face twisted with something between anger and fear. "You think you can sell yourself and hide it under my roof? Is that what I raised you for?" Anna's throat burned. "I didn't do anything." "I didn't agree. It isn't like that." But her mother did not want explanations. She only saw the thick bills the same way the neighbors would see them when the landlord came by for rent. Her mother turned away, as if the sight of her daughter was too heavy to bear. That hurt more than any insult. Anna packed her bag again and left for the estate before the sun fully rose. When she arrived, Lydia tried to stop her at the door, but Anna brushed past her. She found Alexander in his study, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear. He ended the call without looking back, but he knew she was there. His voice was calm. "I thought you would come." She threw the envelope on the table between them. "Take it back. I don't want your money. I don't want any part of this." He did not touch the envelope. He only looked at her with those eyes that always seemed too cold for softness. "You don't understand yet." She almost laughed. "What is there to understand? You think you can buy someone's body, their life, their choices? I'm not for sale." His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed low. "You think this is about buying you? If I wanted something easy, I would have found a surrogate years ago. I chose you because you don't take what you can't earn, because you are the only person in this house who still remembers how to hope for something better." Anna felt her breath catch. Hope? She wanted to scream at him. What did he know about hope? He had everything. He had gates to keep the world out, cameras to watch every door, a name that made people bow their heads when he walked by. She was nothing but a girl who scrubbed his floors. But before she could answer, Lydia burst in with news that Samuel had collapsed at school. The school nurse had called the house because Anna's phone went unanswered. Without a word, Alexander grabbed his keys and told her to come with him. She did not know how she ended up in his car, did not know how his driver got them across town faster than any ambulance could. She only remembered Alexander kneeling beside her brother in the nurse's office, lifting the boy's frail body into his arms like Samuel weighed nothing at all. He did not look like a billionaire then. He looked like a man who had lost something once and was terrified of losing it again. At the hospital, Anna watched through a glass window as Alexander spoke to doctors, signing forms she could not afford to read. He ordered tests she had never heard of. When Samuel woke up, hours later, Alexander was the first face the boy saw. He gave Samuel his watch, slipping it onto the small wrist like a promise. "You're going to be fine," he told the boy. Anna sat in the corner, fighting tears she did not want him to see. On the ride home, Alexander did not speak. Neither did she. Back at her apartment, she asked him to come in. He stepped over the cracked threshold and for the first time saw where she came from. The peeling paint, the single lamp that flickered when she boiled water, the thin blankets she used to keep her mother warm. He stood in her kitchen, too tall for the low ceiling, his polished shoes scuffing against linoleum that never shone, no matter how much she scrubbed it. "Why me?" she asked again, her voice barely there. "Why not pick someone who wants this?" His eyes found hers in the dim light. "Because wanting isn't enough. I need someone who can hold on to something fragile and not break it when it gets too heavy." He stepped closer, but did not touch her. "I know what people say about me, that I ruin everything I touch, that I take what I want and leave ashes behind. Maybe they're right. But if I leave this world, I want to know that one thing I gave it might stay whole." Anna felt her anger slip through her fingers like sand. She hated him for putting this on her shoulders, but she hated more that a small, reckless part of her wanted to be needed for once. Not for scrubbing floors, not for carrying groceries, but for something bigger than survival. The next days blurred into nights. Alexander came back, not with contracts, but with groceries and new blankets for her mother. He brought Samuel books and sat with him on the couch correcting his math homework. He did not speak of the arrangement again, but Anna felt it every time he stood too close. It was there in the way he stayed late in her small kitchen brewing tea with hands that were used to signing billion-dollar deals, but not used to holding warmth. One night, she asked him to stay for dinner. It was nothing but soup and stale bread, but he ate every bite like it was a feast. Samuel asked if he would come back tomorrow. Alexander only nodded. Anna watched him from across the table, her anger softening into something she could not name. They did not touch. Not yet. Sometimes she thought he wanted to. Sometimes she thought he was waiting for her to give him permission he would never take on his own. When he left, he paused by the door, looking at her like he wanted to memorize her face. She almost asked him to stay. She did not. That night, Anna sat awake again, but the water stain on her ceiling no longer looked like a warning. It looked like a question she might finally have the courage to answer. Anna woke before sunrise every day after that. She found herself listening for the sound of his car outside her apartment building. Some mornings it came, some mornings it did not, but each time she told herself she did not care. She told herself she was strong enough to say no if he asked again. But he did not ask, not with words at least. He brought her mother new medication, paid the overdue bills that the landlord pretended not to notice. He made Samuel laugh again. A sound Anna had missed so much, she wanted to bottle it and keep it in her pocket. He never stayed longer than he was welcome, but each time he left, he took something invisible with him. Some part of the wall she had built between her and the world. One evening, Lydia pulled Anna aside at the estate, her eyes sharp but tired. "He is not doing this for charity, Anna. He is doing this because he wants something only you can give him." Anna wanted to snap that she knew that already, but she did not really. She only knew the shape of this truth in pieces, the way a half-open door shows you only what you dare to look at. That same night, Anna found herself in the study again, this time without an invitation. She waited while Alexander signed documents she did not understand, his pen moving steadily across thick paper under the soft lamp glow. When he finally looked up, she did not flinch. She asked him to tell her everything. No more polite lies, no more soft words. The truth, raw and heavy. He leaned back in his chair, and for a moment she saw the man everyone whispered about. The wolf who devoured competitors and spat out their bones. He told her about the diagnosis first. Pancreatic cancer, too advanced for treatment that would buy him more than a few months. He said it like he was reading from a file, clinical and distant. But when he spoke about the child, his voice cracked. He had built an empire out of nothing, built walls so high that no one could climb them. But behind those walls he had nothing. No wife, no siblings left. His parents were gone. The name Reed would die with him unless someone carried it forward. She asked why he did not marry again. He said he had tried once. He said her name so softly Anna almost missed it. Elena, the only woman he had ever trusted. She had wanted a family, but he always said later, when the next deal was done, when the company was safer, when the lawyers stopped circling. Later never came. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Anna saw something break in him when he said her name. "You are the first person I have told this to out loud," he said. His hand rested on the armrest, fingers curled like he was holding something too fragile to show. She wanted to reach for him, but she did not trust her hands to know what to do. He showed her the contract. It was not just money. It was a trust fund for the child, guardianship arrangements, provisions that named Anna as the sole mother, with full rights if he died before the child was born. It was everything he could give except time. He promised not to take Samuel from her, not to move her mother out of her own house, not to drag Anna into his world unless she chose it. Anna read every line twice. The words blurred, but the meaning stayed sharp. This was not a transaction. This was his last chance at forgiveness. For a life he had ruled like a king but never truly lived like a man. She asked him if he loved her. The question came out before she could swallow it back. He looked at her for a long time before answering. "I don't know how to love someone the way they deserve, but I know how to care for you. I know how to fight for what you give me." It was not the answer she wanted, but it was the only honest thing he could say. That night she went home and sat beside Samuel's bed, brushing his hair back while he slept. She thought about what it would mean to give a dying man the only piece of herself she had guarded so fiercely. She thought about what it would mean to bring a child into a world that might never know its father's touch, but would carry his name like a shield. A week later she said yes. She did not say it in his office or under his roof. She waited until he came to her apartment with a bag of groceries and a small stuffed bear for Samuel. She told him quietly while he set the table with her cracked dishes. "I'll do it, not for the money, not because you asked, but because maybe someone should remember you softer than the headlines do." He nodded, his shoulders dropping like a burden had lifted for the first time in years. He did not touch her, did not try to claim the promise with anything more than a look that said he would carry this truth carefully. The first time they were together was not a night of passion the way her friends in high school used to whisper about. It was quiet, almost awkward. He asked if she wanted the lights off. She said no, she wanted to see him human, flawed, not the man in the news but the man who had trusted her with his last hope. He was gentle in ways she did not expect. He moved like he was afraid to break her, and she held him like she was afraid he would disappear if she let go. When it was done, they lay in silence, her head on his chest, his fingers brushing her hair. Neither spoke the word love because it did not live here yet, but something else did, a promise stitched together in the dark. Days passed. She felt the change before the test showed the line. She told him by slipping the tiny stick into his hand one morning in the garden behind the estate. He looked at her, then at the line, then back at her like he had never seen her before. He kissed her forehead, nothing more, but it felt like the softest vow he could make. "Lydia found out," the staff whispered. Some said she was smart, trapping a dying billionaire with a womb. Some said she was stupid, letting her life be rewritten by a man who would not live to see it. Anna did not listen. She stopped caring what shadows said about her. Every morning she woke up, her hand on her belly, and whispered a promise to the life growing inside her. She did not expect the letters that came next. Threats hidden as polite warnings, old board members who did not want an heir, distant cousins who wanted the fortune to stay in cold vaults instead of warm arms. Alexander read each letter and burned them in his study. He told her not to worry, but she saw the weight in his shoulders, the way he paused too long when he thought she was not looking. One night she woke to find him sitting on her couch, head in his hands. She sat beside him, neither speaking. She rested her palm on his back, felt him breathe her in like a lifeline. He whispered that he was afraid. Afraid he would not live long enough to see his child's eyes. Afraid he would leave her alone in a world that did not know how to be kind. She told him she would not let the world forget him, not the man, not the father. They stayed like that until dawn, two people who had never asked for love, but found themselves building it, piece by piece anyway. She did not know if it would be enough, but she knew it was real. And sometimes, real was enough to fight for. It started with a phone call just after midnight, when Anna was half asleep on the couch, and Alexander was in his study going over legal files that no longer mattered to anyone but him. She answered because the ringing would have woken Samuel, who had fallen asleep with his head in her lap. The voice on the line was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. "Leave him. Take the money and disappear, or watch everything you care about burn." She did not have to ask who sent it. She knew. The same board members who had sent polite letters now sharpened their knives in the dark. She told Alexander the next morning while he made her tea in the tiny kitchen she had once hated for being too small to hold big dreams. He did not look surprised. He asked her what she wanted to do. She said she did not want to run. Not again. He nodded, and for the first time in weeks she saw the old wolf return, the one who turned threats into dust with nothing but a signature and a glance that made grown men lose sleep. They held hands across the table like children pretending not to be afraid. He told her they would fight this together, that no boardroom deal was worth more than the promise growing inside her. She believed him, because when he said it, he looked at her, not the world behind her. But promises do not keep the dark away. Days later, Samuel did not come home from school. Anna waited by the window until dusk painted the street orange, and her hands trembled so hard she dropped a glass, trying to set the table. When the knock came, she thought it would be Samuel with his backpack and that crooked smile. It was not. It was a man in a suit who called her ma'am, like it was an insult. He told her Samuel was fine for now, but accidents happen when people forget who really owns the pieces on the board. Alexander arrived minutes later. He did not knock. He stormed through her door with 3 security men at his back. He did not yell at her. He did not ask questions. He only held her face in his hands like he was memorizing her panic. Then he promised the men who took Samuel would not sleep tonight, or ever again if they touched a hair on that boy's head. Hours later, Samuel was found unharmed at a gas station miles away, sitting on the curb eating a bag of chips some kind soul had given him. Alexander brought him home himself, carrying him in his arms while Anna sobbed against the doorframe. Samuel asked if they could have pancakes for dinner and if Alexander would stay the night. Alexander said yes before Anna could find her voice. They ate pancakes at midnight. Alexander fed Samuel spoonfuls when Anna's hands shook too badly to hold the fork. When Samuel fell asleep on the couch, Anna and Alexander stood in the kitchen, surrounded by the sticky smell of syrup and the hum of an old fridge that never kept milk cold enough. She asked him if he was still sure that this child inside her, the child Samuel called the baby in Mama's belly, was worth this war. He told her it was not just worth it. It was the only thing that made sense. Then he kissed her, not like the first time, when it was gentle and careful, but like he needed to feel something other than fear. She kissed him back, because she needed that too. They did not sleep that night. They lay on her narrow bed with Samuel curled up at their feet and talked about names for the baby. She told him she wanted something strong, something that could stand tall when the world tried to bend it. He told her he did not care if it was a boy or a girl, only that it would have her eyes, because her eyes were the first thing that ever made him believe softness could survive inside stone. But the threats did not stop. They came as men in suits in parking lots, as unmarked letters under her door, as whispers that reached her mother's ears, until her mother asked if she had cursed this family by saying yes to a man like Alexander Reed. She did not have answers for her mother. She only had mornings where Alexander sat at the edge of her bed reading legal statements like they were bedtime stories. She only had nights where he held her hand under the thin blankets and told her he wished he could promise her forever. But all he could give her was the truth. One night, she woke to find him gone, his side of the bed cold. She found him outside in the rain behind the estate, standing under the dead oak tree he once told her he planned to cut down because it blocked the view. She asked him why he was here, why he stood there soaked and trembling. He said he did not know how to say goodbye to the world that would not say goodbye to him. She wrapped her arms around him until the rain felt warm. When they returned inside, he told her the doctors said he might not see the baby born. He told her they were wrong because he refused to let this story end before it finished. She pressed her forehead to his and told him he was allowed to be afraid. He laughed through his tears and asked if she knew she was the only thing he ever wanted that money could not buy. When the contractions came early, Anna panicked. It was not supposed to happen yet. Samuel ran next door to find Lydia, who called for Alexander. He carried Anna to the car himself, shouting orders no one dared question. In the hospital, he refused to leave her side. He held her hands so tight she almost could not feel her fingers, but she needed that grip to believe she would make it through. Hours blurred into the smell of antiseptic and the scream of monitors. She begged him not to die before he saw their child's face. He swore he would not. When the baby's first cry broke the sterile air, Anna felt the world tilt back into place for the first time since the night she stood in his room, trembling at his impossible request. Alexander held his daughter with hands that once built empires but now trembled like a boy's. He whispered her name into the soft crown of her head. Anna saw his eyes, full of fear and hope and something like peace. He placed the baby on Anna's chest and pressed his forehead to hers. "You saved me," he said. She told him he had saved her too, and in that tiny hospital room, they became something no threat could undo. A family made not by money or power, but by two people who were never supposed to find each other and did anyway. In the days that followed, the hospital room became their entire world. Anna held their daughter close, feeling the small, steady heartbeat beneath her palm like proof that hope could live in fragile skin. Alexander stayed beside her, refusing every call that tried to drag him back to boardrooms and unfinished deals. He told Lydia to handle it. He told the lawyers to wait. Nothing outside that room mattered more than the warmth of his daughter's tiny fingers curling around his thumb. But the world does not stop when you need it to. On the fourth night, while Anna drifted into shallow sleep, Alexander stood by the window, watching city lights flicker like distant fires. Lydia knocked softly and stepped inside. Her eyes were red, her voice low as she told him the board had forced an emergency meeting. Rumors of his declining health had leaked, shares were slipping, investors were threatening to dissolve the trust he had set up for Anna and the child. Someone inside the circle wanted the Reed name buried for good. Alexander told her to call a car. He kissed Anna's forehead without waking her. He kissed the baby's head too, breathing her in as if to memorize the scent he might not carry back. He whispered, "Wait for me." He left that room wearing the same suit she once called his armor, shoulders squared like he still believed he could bend the world to his will. The boardroom smelled of old leather and fresh betrayal. Alexander sat at the head of the table, while men who once flinched at his silence now spoke with too much confidence. They questioned the legitimacy of the trust, the circumstances of Anna's pregnancy, the scandal it painted across their brand. They spoke of contingency plans, of dissolving assets before the baby's birth could complicate inheritance laws. They used words like liability and unconfirmed heir as if his daughter was not real flesh and blood, breathing in her mother's arms. He listened, stone-faced, while they laid out their plan to erase him before he could step down on his own terms. They wanted him dead in all but name, his signature on a settlement, his silence as the price. They offered him comfort in exchange for surrender, money for his last days if he agreed to dissolve the trust, to vanish quietly and leave the empire to vultures who would pick it clean. Alexander's hands trembled under the table, but his voice did not. He told them he would never sign. He told them they could burn the empire to the ground, but they would never take his daughter's name off the door. When they pushed back, he pushed harder. For hours he fought with words sharper than any knife, bleeding every ounce of strength into a promise he had written in Anna's eyes the night she said yes. Back at the hospital, Anna woke to find his side of the bed cold. Lydia sat in the corner holding the baby, her face pale and tight. When Anna asked where he was, Lydia lied. She said he was finalizing paperwork. He would be back soon. But Anna saw the truth in Lydia's eyes. She had lived too long with men who made soft lies sound like comfort. She tried to call him, but it rang and rang and rang. She wrapped the baby in a blanket and stood by the window, watching headlights sweep the dark streets, hoping each one would stop at the hospital door. When the hours stretched into dawn, Anna knew something had broken. At the boardroom table, Alexander's body gave out before his mind did. A sharp pain like a blade twisting beneath his ribs, a cough that tasted of iron. He pressed a hand to his chest, told them he was not done speaking, but his vision blurred and the voices turned to echoes. He fell forward as security rushed in. The last thing he heard was his own promise, repeating in his skull like a prayer he refused to betray. She will not be forgotten. He woke in a hospital bed across town from Anna's room, tubes in his arm, wires on his chest. A doctor telling him he needed to rest, that the stress could kill him. Alexander only asked for his phone. He tried to call Anna, but her number slipped from his trembling hands. Lydia answered instead. Her voice cracked when she told him the baby had smiled for the first time. He closed his eyes and whispered that he needed to see her. Lydia said she would bring them soon. But soon is never soon enough when the end comes for men who built walls so high they forgot they could not outrun their own mortality. The next morning, Anna arrived with the baby bundled in a soft blanket. The nurse let her through, even though visiting hours were over. She found Alexander awake but weaker than she had ever seen him. His eyes searched her face like he needed proof that she was still real. She laid their daughter on his chest and watched his hands curl around the tiny body like he was holding the sun. He told her he was sorry he could not promise forever. She told him she never wanted forever. She only wanted the truth. He smiled, tired but warm. He told her the truth was she saved him from dying alone, that she gave him something pure to leave behind. Anna told him their daughter's name again, this time clear and strong. Elena Hope Reed. His eyes closed as he mouthed the name like a prayer. His breath stilled for a moment, then returned ragged and shallow. She laid her forehead against his, her tears dripping onto the baby's soft hair. "You did not lose everything," she whispered. "You gave it to us. That means you win." His last promise was not spoken aloud, but she heard it anyway. He would not let the world take this from her, from their child, from the only piece of himself that ever mattered more than his empire. When the machines stopped beeping, Anna did not scream, she did not collapse. She sat with her daughter cradled against his chest until the sun rose through the hospital window, spilling gold across a man who had spent his life chasing kingdoms and found his only crown in a child's heartbeat. Outside, the lawyers circled like wolves, but Anna stood taller than the men who thought they could bury his legacy in silence. She carried his name not because she needed it, but because he had given it freely, with no chains. When the press came for her, when the board tried to drag the trust into court, Anna did not flinch. She stood at the gates of the estate that once felt too grand for a housekeeper, and told them they would have to bury her beside him if they wanted to erase her daughter's name. And when they realized they could not break her, they stepped back. Not because they feared her, but because she had learned how to use his greatest weapon, truth spoken without apology. She buried Alexander in the garden behind the estate, beneath the old oak tree he once hated, and she had asked him to spare. She planted wildflowers around the stone that bore only his name. No titles, no empire, just a man, remembered by the two hearts he left beating in a world too small to measure the love he gave at the end. Spring arrived late that year, drifting in on shy breezes that coaxed the last frost from the earth around the old Reed estate. Anna moved through the halls quietly, her footsteps soft against marble floors that no longer felt like someone else's kingdom. The staff had thinned to only those loyal enough to stay, people who called her ma'am not with resentment but with a quiet respect she had never asked for, yet somehow earned. Each morning she stood by the nursery window with Elena Hope in her arms, watching the sun slip through lace curtains onto the floor that once gleamed too cold for a child's laughter. Now the walls held framed sketches instead of contracts. The air smelled faintly of baby powder and wildflowers instead of old money and ambition. Anna did not pretend it was easy. She still woke some nights, reaching for Alexander's warmth beside her, only to find the echo of his promise in the hush of an empty pillow. Some nights the grief pressed so tight against her chest she thought it would drown her in silence. But then she would feel her daughter's tiny hand brush her collarbone in sleep, reminding her the story was not over just because the first chapters ended in shadows. Lydia stayed. She walked the gardens with Anna in the early mornings, the two women breathing in the new life that pushed up through the soil Alexander once wanted paved for profit. Sometimes they sat beneath the old oak tree, the gravestone barely visible under a bed of wild violets, Anna planted by hand. She whispered stories to Elena there, stories not about empires or money, but about courage and softness, about a man who learned too late what mattered, and a woman who said yes when the world expected her to run. Some days the board still tried to send letters, offers dressed as threats, demands pretending to be negotiations. Anna never read them. Lydia burned them in the fireplace while Elena giggled on the living room rug, clutching the same stuffed bear her father once brought to buy an hour of her mother's trust. When Samuel turned 12, he asked if he could add his father's name to his last name too. Anna said yes. The lawyer tried to argue, but she shut the door in his face before he could finish the sentence. On the anniversary of Alexander's last promise, Anna stood beneath the oak tree, with Elena balanced on her hip and Samuel leaning against her side. She spoke softly to the stone, telling him about the baby's first steps, about the mornings when Samuel made pancakes all by himself, about how sometimes the house still felt too big but never empty. She thanked him for leaving her nothing she could sell and everything she could hold. As dusk settled around them, fireflies blinking above the garden like tiny crowns, Anna looked at her children and felt the echo of his final truth settle warm and whole in her chest. Some legacies are not written in fortunes or marble towers. They are written in laughter at the breakfast table, in muddy shoes by the back door, in a child's middle name whispered like a secret vow. When she carried her daughter inside that night, Anna paused at the nursery doorway, the moonlight soft on Elena's sleepy face. She pressed her lips to the baby's forehead and whispered the words she wished Alexander could have heard for himself. "We do not survive you. We carry you forward, and that is enough." Sometimes love does not ask for forever. It asks for the courage to say yes when the world says you should run, and the strength to keep your promise when forever runs out.